Senator Horsford had indicated that he has some questions for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Plage, for the presentation. I think I want to go first to the low-income student data information, and then I'd like to offer some specific suggestions on ways in which maybe we can get a priority of areas to restore, and if there had to be cuts, you know, what cuts could be more reasonably accepted by the system. I think that's kind of the level of specificity that we're getting to at this point that we need to have as we're doing in some of the other budgets. Let me just go back to this issue and ask some questions on this 12.2% of students who are enrolled in higher education. First is that number, as this graph on page 6 indicates, has been dropping. So what are we doing to help ensure that students from low-income families continue to have an opportunity to participate in higher education? And what level, and you may not have this today, are these students able to enter the system? We have the community college, we have the state college, we have the universities, and you know, specifically, and you know, I'll challenge it a bit. I kind of reject the idea that the only place low-income students should be able to start is at the community college.
I absolutely agree with that, Senator.
And I know that that's not necessarily the intent, but to just say that we should make college accessible for students at that level, I don't think is the intent or the mission or the goals that any of us have. So can you elaborate further on that issue, please?
Madam Chair and Senator, I appreciate you. I'll go straight to the question. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to clarify my remarks, and you are absolutely correct that the entrance point to higher education should not be determined by family income. Absolutely not. What I did intend to say was that historically, community colleges in Nevada have a mission of open access and affordability that is different than the universities simply because of the cost structure of running the two. And so in making tuition and fee decisions, we have specifically tried to keep those more affordable and therefore accessible. With respect to your question regarding the data on slide 6 and what are we doing, I would say, and not intending to be glib, I assure you, not nearly enough. We have this population rushing at us from high schools in historic numbers, and we know that. We have an increasingly first-generation college-going population coming to us from a sector that does not have a value placed on it in all instances of college going. We've got to change that culture, and part of my comment is intended to say that as we know the state can't do everything, but as we look at fees, it has been the policy of the board, and I'm sure that this would be echoed by all the presidents here this morning. Let us be sure that we use a portion of those fees to provide access, need-based financial dollars, so that we don't close the door of opportunity to those students. That's the big message here, Senator, not to shuffle students from one demographic sector to one portal or another.
Thank you for that response. If I could follow up, Madam Chair. So I know the board had a lot of the Board of Regents had an extensive discussion on this fee increase issue. And so if fees ultimately have to be increased, in order to sustain programs at the institutional levels and those dollars stay there. What additional policies has the board enacted along the lines that you just expressed around providing for financial aid, making access affordable, educating students and parents on the options that are available to them from a financial aid perspective? Because one goes with the other, and we can't ultimately make these decisions without knowing with assurance that the board's going to do what it can, if it has to raise tuition, to also make sure financial aid is available for those who need it, particularly when you show us the numbers that we are, second in Nevada history with the number of low-income students enrolled and 49th in the nation. Those are not benchmarks that any of us want to see.
Senator Horsford, you hit on a couple of critical issues here, and I guess this is, as the chair indicated in starting, this is going to be the morning where we hit all the nerves. But you're implying, in my opinion, in the question, a discussion regarding the current letter of intent from the legislature to the Nevada System of Higher Education and the distribution of fees. And what we would suggest, particularly in light of declining budgets, is that for the fee increases that are proposed in this biennium, that we be allowed to take those back to the board and allocate them for these specific uses on campus, one of which has always been need-based financial aid, and the board has a specific policy in place for the allocation of a portion of those fees to financial aid, and the vast majority of the financial aid to need-based financial aid. And I guess what we're saying here is that the need is so great now that if we do increase those, that you allow us the full flexibility in utilizing those fees rather than just a portion of it to meet those demands on campus. That's the financial aspect. I think your greater question involves, it's probably beyond the scope of this hearing, but I think it involves outreach. It involves efforts to move into the communities in ways that these presidents have to do every day and create the culture and the value for higher education. It requires that we instill in folks that there are lots of opportunities and that education will result in higher social and economic values for the state. But as I say, I think those broader topics are probably beyond the scope of this morning's discussion. I'll enhance them if you wish.
Just one final question.